Next fact, myth: if it's sore, stretch it. Sometimes myth. So you got to think, guys, like, do you need WD-40 or duct tape? Let's simplify this thing. Stability versus mobility. So let's look at the shoulder, very common one, right? Does the shoulder need mobility or does it need stability? The shoulder joint, and see if you can see my hand here, like it needs to be very locked into place, right? Like, we don't want a super mobile shoulder joint. That needs to be extremely stable. So the shoulder joint actually needs duct tape. The knee needs duct tape. It needs stability, right? Now, mobility, different things that need mobility would be more like the thoracic spine, like aka upper back, obviously like your hamstrings, things like that. Those types of areas in your body actually need more mobility. So sometimes stretching can actually be making the problem worse. If your shoulder feels tight and you just crank your shoulder into external rotation, you're actually just causing more and more joint laxity that you don't want. So things to remember with that is like knowing what the joint's purpose actually is. So again, if your shoulder feels tight and you feel like you need to stretch it, what you should actually do is stretch your T-spine, which is right underneath your shoulder. Loosening that up will actually make your shoulder feel better because it will be in a much more stable position. Possible origin, if anything else is sore, we usually stretch that, right? It also does provide a temporary feel good. If you crank on your shoulder with a band, it's going to feel slightly better, but that's just for the short term. So don't always just stretch things just because they feel sore. Next fact, myth. Sorry, mouse is disconnecting here. Baseball players should never lift anything overhead. I hear this with volleyball players too. Any sort of overhead athletes. That's sometimes a myth as well. So here's the thing: if you play an overhead sport, you're trying to tell me that you don't need to be strong and stable in an overhead position. Now, it's not as simple as it seems, right? So we test bilateral mobility differences. So basically, if one side of your body is way more mobile than the other side, now we have a few red flags, right? So we're not going to do any fixed positions. We're not going to do any barbells overhead, anything like that. We're going to be very careful with pressing. But we're also going to work on those things. So we're going to inhibit some muscles. We're going to lengthen some muscles. We're going to activate some muscles. Make sure that your scaps and your shoulder blades are working in the correct way. And then, yeah, we might do overhead. I train a minor league pitcher, and he does overhead lifting. So it really more depends on the athlete and how they're moving. Now, totally get it. If you got a group of 30 dudes in a room, I probably wouldn't have them press overhead just because the decent chance that at least half of them probably shouldn't be doing it. Ways to cheat that: dumbbell incline press. That's going to work a few more of the shoulders. Any sort of carries with kettlebells, overhead carries, rack carries, things like that. And again, the possible origin for this myth is because if your shoulders suck and they don't move super great and you do lift overhead, it's going to hurt more. So with overhead lifting, just know your athlete, do an assessment, figure out where they're at, and that'll help you determine what type of lifting that you should program in.